Hi class and welcome back. So what I'm going to try to do is record a couple of short segments, basically walking you through the Stone Age sort of section of our book, and then we'll pick up in class next time I see you. So we talked a little bit already about the birth of civilizations and sort of how civilizations begin, the advances that take place in a society that sort of mark that. And when we look at the Stone Age, we're basically going to witness those occurrences, sort of the beginnings of those occurrences. So the Stone Age is divided into three different phases: the Paleolithic, the Mesolithic, and the Neolithic. The Paleolithic is the oldest, and Paleo in Greek is old. Lithic is stone, from lithos, so it's the old Stone Age. Meso is middle, so it's the middle Stone Age. And Neo is new, so the new Stone Age. We'll focus today on the Paleolithic, and that's sort of the oldest sort of Stone Age evidence that we have. And that in itself is also divided into three subphases: the lower, the middle, and the upper. We'll very briefly look at the lower, and you can see that's a very, very large span of time, 2 million to 80,000 BC. Main activity there is Europe as well as Africa, but nothing in the Middle East. And then we'll work our way to the Middle Paleolithic, and our primary focus will be the Upper Paleolithic. That's where we actually have our first sort of small stone sculptures, or also where we're going to have our cave paintings. So when we talk about the Lower Paleolithic, now I mentioned a little bit in class last week that the term Stone Age, Bronze Age, Iron Age, those kind of terminologies are used to indicate the type of tools, weapons that are being used. So the Stone Age is going to have stone tools, stone weapons. And this is an example of one of these first known stone tool manufacturers, and this is basically a hand axe. And you can see it's basically taking a harder stone by pounding a softer stone, and eventually you get something that can be used to cut with, skin animals, and then eventually potentially as a weapon as well. Here's some examples from northern Tanzania. This is a period known as the Oldowan tradition, and what we have there are a couple of these stone tools that were found inside of this gorge area. Fairly famous cave is the so-called Shanidar Cave. It is in modern-day Iraq. You can see there on the map. And the Shanidar Cave is primarily a Middle Paleolithic cave. And what we can see here is the sort of landscape in which it actually falls, and there on the lower right is the actual cave opening. The site is located in the Zagros Mountains of Kurdistan in Iraq, and it was excavated in the 1950s and early 1960s. Within the excavation, they actually discovered 9 skeletons of Neanderthals of various ages. And they're actually, in the Smithsonian Institute, they're actually casts of one of the skeletons. Now, the cave itself was a lower level cave, so you can see in the early excavations how they actually had to take a ladder to actually be able to access the lower areas, and all the objects that had to be removed were also had to be brought up through a sort of a rail system that was set up. Here is an image of the actual cave plan. And we're looking at here is an actual plan of the cave. So we'll be looking at different types of drawings. A plan is sort of, if you can sort of think of it, a drawing of a slice across horizontally. So it's kind of like an aerial view, but we're basically looking at a slice of the actual cave. On the right there is an image of the various levels within the actual cave as they were exploring it. One of the famous burials from this particular cave is the Shanidar 4 cave, and it provides for us the best evidence for Neanderthal burial rituals. It's a skeleton of an adult male aged between 30 and 45 years old. He was positioned so that he was lying on his left side in a partial fetal position. And at some point they took soil samples from the area around where the bones were, and they took them for pollen analysis. And this pollen analysis revealed that the soil around him actually had particular flower types, and they are listed here. They are mainly medicinal plants, so yarrow, cornflower, bachelor's button, St. Barnaby's thistle, ragwort, grape hyacinth, joint pine or woody, horsetail, and hollyhock. Some of these are actually still found today if you go to sort of a vitamin nature store that sort of sells non-medicinal plant remedies. Sometimes you'll see these types of plants still used today. So in that sort of lower right drawing there, watercolor, it's basically showing a possible ritual that took place. So when we see the fact that they actually included flowers, some sort of offerings along with the burial, that is significant because that's the first time, this is the first evidence that we have of some kind of ritual actually taking place related to burial. This, of course, implies potentially the belief of an afterlife, the understanding of what the actual plants themselves might mean. So let's say if it's medicinal, maybe he himself was a sort of a medicine man or a shaman, and therefore was somebody very special for this particular group of people. The burial inside with the actual flowers could indicate that he would need his tools, right, his tools of trade for the afterlife, or it could be as an offering, sort of to honor him for his role in that society. Here are just a couple of other from the other tombs, Shanidar 8 and Shanidar 2, some more skull remains. From the Shanidar cave, we also have a typical sort of hand axes, like the ones that I showed in the first slide, such your typical sort of Paleolithic stone tool. Here we have another set of caves that produce quite a lot of evidence of Stone Age occupation between 50 and 11,000 BC. These are Mount Carmel caves in Israel. And this is a coastal mountain range in northern Israel, stretching from the Mediterranean Sea towards the sort of the southeast. And here, archaeologists have actually discovered ancient wine and oil presses throughout the various caves of Mount Carmel. Here, also from the same site, are some flint and obsidian tools. Now, flint is a very common stone. It's a very, very sharp stone used for the sharper types of blades that they might try to, or that they would require. The sharper the blade, the easier it is to cut things like grains, the easier it is to actually skin animals. Obsidian has similar qualities. Obsidian, though, is very, very rare. It only comes from sites that are near volcanic activity and is considered by many to be volcanic glass. So the fact that we actually have this is interesting because it most likely is brought in from an area further out. And then lastly, I just want to show this last stone tool. And here we have a scale drawing to kind of help put this idea to scale that most of these tools were sort of small handheld tools, nothing too large in size yet until we get to sort of the later periods.